Every night she whispers the same name. A name that belongs to a woman buried 70 years ago. There is a third person in my marriage. She is silent and invisible to my husband, but her presence fills our home, especially at night. She doesn't haunt the hallways or move objects. Her presence is more intimate, more terrifying than that. She lives inside my daughter's sleep. She speaks through her dreams in a soft, constant whisper. And every single night she says her own name, Genevieve. Life was, by all measures, idyllic. My husband, Mark, is a surgeon, a man of science and long, exhausting hours at the hospital. I left my career in publishing to raise our daughter, Sophie. Our world was a carefully constructed haven of bedtime stories, finger painting, and the sweet, melodic chaos of a happy 4-year-old. I cherished the routines, the predictable rhythms of our days. The nights were my own, a time for quiet, for reading, for listening to the gentle static of the baby monitor on my nightstand. A reassuring hum that meant all was right in our world. Then the whispering began. It started about a year ago, so faint I thought I was imagining it, a trick of the static. A soft, sibilant murmur from Sophie's room, long after she'd fallen asleep. I'd turn up the volume, straining to listen. I told myself it was just sleep talking, the nonsensical mumblings of a developing brain. But the mumbling grew clearer. It resolved itself into a single distinct word, a name. Genevieve? She would say it over and over, not in a distressed way, but with a soft, sighing quality, as if calling for a lost friend. Genevieve, Genevieve. She's just talking in her sleep, Julia, Mark would say, already half asleep himself after a 16-hour shift. She probably heard the name in a cartoon. Don't worry about it. But I did worry, because I am the gatekeeper of what my daughter sees and hears. I know every book on her shelf, every show she watches. There was no Genevieve. The name had come from somewhere else. It had been inserted into her dreams from an unknown source, and the thought filled me with a primal, protective dread. The real fear began the night the whispers changed. I was lying in bed, reading, the monitor humming beside me. The familiar whisper started, Genevieve? But then it was followed by a new phrase, spoken with a sigh of adult-like sorrow that was chilling coming from my child. ... Genevieve is cold. The locket is gone. The locket. The specificity of it, the sense of loss, it was too complex, too. Narrative for a dream. This wasn't a random word anymore. This was a story. And I needed to know who was telling it. The next morning, while Sophie was at preschool, I sat at my laptop, my hands trembling slightly. I did the only thing I could think to do. I searched for the name Genevieve in connection with our small historic town. I navigated to the website for St. Mary's, the oldest cemetery in the county, the final resting place for generations of the town's inhabitants. I typed the name into their burial record search engine. A single result appeared. My breath caught. In my throat, Genevieve Dubois. Born 1928. Died 1955. Age at death 27. The date swam before my eyes. She had died exactly 70 years ago. She was real. The ghost in my daughter's dreams had a name, and now she had a grave. The whispers continued, evolving. They became fragments of a larger, sorrowful narrative. One night, the piano is so quiet now. Another, he shouldn't have taken the silver locket. It was mine. The words painted a portrait of a life I didn't know, a life of music, sadness, and a stolen piece of jewelry. I knew I had to go. I didn't tell Mark. How could I explain that I was taking our daughter to a cemetery to meet the woman she was? Whispering about? The next Saturday, I drove us to St. Mary's. It was a beautiful, peaceful place with ancient oak trees shading the weathered headstones. I didn't lead Sophie or point her in any direction. I just let her go, my heart pounding with a mixture of terror and validation. She wandered through the rows of stone angels and granite crosses, not with the aimless energy of a child, but with a strange, quiet purpose. She walked directly to a section in the oldest part of the cemetery and stopped. She stood before a simple, modest headstone, its surface worn smooth by 70 years of wind and rain. She reached out her small hand and laid it flat against the cold stone, as if comforting an old friend. I knelt beside her, my eyes tracing the faint, moss-filled letters. Genevieve Dubois, beloved wife, 1928 to 1955. May she play for the angels. She play for the angels. The piano is so quiet now. It was all real. My next stop was the town library, its archives filled with the microfilm reels that held our town's history. I had a name, a date, and a story begging to be told. I scrolled through the reels for 1955, the hum of the machine a lonely sound in the quiet room. I found her obituary. It was short, tragically so. Genevieve Dubois, a beloved local piano teacher, had passed away at her home after a long illness. She was survived by her husband, Robert Dubois. The official story was neat, tidy, and sad, but Sophie's whispers hinted at something more. They spoke of a locket, of a he who shouldn't have taken it. I started digging deeper, moving from obituaries to the society pages, looking for a picture of Genevieve, for a glimpse into her life. I found her wedding announcement from 1952. There she was, a beautiful young woman with bright, hopeful eyes and a radiant smile. And there, resting against the lace collar of her wedding dress, was a stunning, intricately engraved silver locket. The story was still incomplete. A quiet death, a grieving husband. It didn't explain the sorrow, the feeling of betrayal in Sophie's whispers. I kept digging, scrolling through the months following Genevieve's death. And then I found it. A small announcement from the spring of 1956, less than a year after Genevieve had died. Local businessman Robert Dubois weds. The article was brief. It announced the marriage of the recent widower to a woman named Eleanor Croft. The final sentence was the one that made the air leave my lungs. It mentioned that the new bride, Eleanor, had been Genevieve's private nurse during the final months of her illness. My mind raced. A sick woman, a handsome husband, a young nurse. It was a story as old as time. I frantically searched for any photos of the new bride. I found one a few weeks later at a local charity gala. Picture of the happy new couple, Robert and Eleanor Dubois. And there, gleaming against the dark fabric of Eleanor's dress, was the same unmistakable silver locket. Shouldn't have taken the silver locket. It was mine. The whispers weren't a memory of a sickness, or even of death. They were the eternal echo of a final, intimate betrayal. A woman on her deathbed, watching her husband and her nurse fall in love, her possessions already being claimed. A heartbreak. So profound, so silent, that it had vibrated through time, finding a receiver in the innocent dreams of my daughter. How do you parent a child who has become a vessel for a stranger's 70-year-old sorrow? How do you comfort them from a pain that doesn't belong to them? The knowledge changed everything. Every night, when I listened on the monitor, I no longer heard my daughter. I heard Genevieve. I heard her grief, her helplessness, her quiet rage. The whispers were no longer a mystery. They were an accusation, a lament playing on a loop from beyond the grave. I had to do something. I couldn't tell Mark. He'd suggest therapy, sleep studies, a litany of logical solutions for an illogical problem. This required a different kind of intervention. A few days later, I found what I was looking for in a dusty antique shop downtown. It wasn't the same locket, but it was close. A sterling silver oval from the same era, with faded floral engravings. That evening, after Sophie was sound asleep, I crept into her room. The whispers had already started. Genevieve is cold, ... I placed the antique locket on her knitstand, beside her glass of water. It gleamed in the soft glow of her nightlight. I didn't say a word. I just left it there, a silent offering, a gesture of restitution across the decades, an apology on behalf of a man long dead. That night, for the first time in over a year, the baby monitor was silent. There were no whispers. The next night was silent as well, and the night after that. The whispers were gone. Genevieve was finally Leslie quiet. It was as if this small, symbolic act was all she had ever wanted. Acknowledgement, peace. But the silence she left in our house is heavier and more haunting than any word she ever spoke. I look at my daughter, sleeping soundly, her face a perfect portrait of innocence, and I know she is not alone. I am a mother to a little girl named Sophie, but I have also, somehow, become the keeper of a woman named Genevieve. I have carried her burden and quieted her sorrow, and now, in the profound silence of the night, a new, colder question takes root in my heart. Now that Genevieve's story is over, whose dreams will my daughter dream next?